Hello and welcome to the Scholar Progenium. Today I'm going to be comparing two classic Blood Angels units, the Sanguinary Guard and the Death Company. Now I've been inspired to make this video because in recent months, when keeping a finger on the pulse of competitive 40k, I'm sure any of you who have noticed a distinct lack of Death Company in these lists, and this was very much underlined by the much heralded unbeatable Blood Angels list that contained 4 elite units, which was no less than 3 squads of 8 Sanguinary Guard and a squad of 3 Blade Guard veterans, but no Death Company. So what are Death Company doing on the competitive scene? Why are they not appearing? We need to have a look at this. So I thought it'd be a perfect time to compare these two classic units, the Death Company versus the Sanguinary Guard. And for those of you who aren't competitive players, maybe you're just starting out, maybe you're collecting your first Blood Angels army, which box do you want to buy first? Which elite unit are you going to add first? Because there is no doubt that if you're a Blood Angel, you're going to want some Sanguinary Guard and really some Death Company in your list. You'd be remiss not to try both units out, and I take both in most of my lists all the time. I love both units. So let's have a look at these two units. So first of all, who are they in the fluff and the lore, so to speak? Well, the Sanguinary Guard. Oh, wrong page, sorry. So I've just got my codex here now. So the Sanguinary Guard trace their heritage back to the Great Crusade, when they served as bodyguards to Sanguinius himself. Since that time, every Blood Angel's successor chapter has had a formation of these warriors, as directed by Ascalon, the leader of their noble order at the time of the Legion's dissolution. As the Sanguinary Guard are ancient, so too is their war gear. They can trace the lineage of their golden armour and wrist-mounted Angelus bolt guns to the time of the Horus Heresy. It is no different for the mighty and Carmen glaives they wield, which cannot be scratched, warped, or broken, no matter how terrible the violence wrought by or against them. Made of angel steel, the secrets of forging of these beautiful and deadly swords and axes are known only to the Blood Angels artificers. So these guys are the best of the best Blood Angels. They originally served as Sanguinius' host, and they still serve as the host of the chapter master of any successor chapter, the bodyguard, or just as the most elite unit in any host of Blood Angels. So these guys are the best of the best. Their armor is the best of the best. Their weapons, the best of the best. Absolutely incredible. And this is reflected in the models. They are firstborn, but they do not sort of look bad in comparison to Primaris if you wanted an all Primaris army. The Sanguinary Guard look great. And there's plenty of videos out there showing you how you can convert Primaris Sanguinary Guard if you really wanted to. But I think they just stand tall on their own. They're absolutely brilliant models. Now, the Death Company, a little different flavour for you here. Now, on the eve of battle, the Blood Angels bend the knee and turn their thoughts to Sanguinius' sacrifice. Chaplains pace amongst the warriors, blessing each while chanting the Mora Patris, the Mass of Doom. They take careful note of which warriors slur their speech, are glazed of eye, or appear overly excitable, for these are most likely to succumb to the Black Rage. In their minds, the Death Company have lost all knowledge of who they are, where they are, and even the time in which they are living. Their consciousness are thrust millennia into the past, where they believe they are fighting in the cataclysmic battles of the Horus Heresy, whether it be on the walls of the Imperial Palace, on one of the myriad forgotten battlefields in which the Blood Angels undoubtedly fought, or within the twisted and warped corridors of Horus' corrupted flagship, the Vengeful Spirit. Many believe they are Sanguinius himself engaged in combat with the arch-traitor. So these guys are any Blood Angel, anyone can fall to this, and this is the beauty. A member of the Sanguinary Guard could essentially fall to the Black Rage and be interred into the Death Company. Their armor's painted black, and they are formed separately to their brothers and segregated and then sent into battle. Now, the Death Company almost always sacrifice themselves, and this is kind of reflected in the way you play them on the battlefield. These guys are your shock troops, your hard-hitting troops who you throw into the meat grinder, and they are going to destroy anything that they come into contact with until eventually they're burnt out and reduced to nothingness. And the rules and the way these units are designed on their data sheets actually really accurately reflects this fluff, and that's the beauty of these guys. They're just such classic Blood Angels units that play in a really Blood Angel-y way and let us just make the most of our assault doctrines, our +1 to advance and charge, our extra attacks in turn 3. It's all great when you're looking at these two units, but how do they compare side by side? So let's get into the rules. Why are Sanguinary Guard consistently picked over Death Company? Why are competitive players doubling up on their Sang Guard units and forsaking Death Company in their lists, when Death Company we know are extremely effective? Well, it immediately becomes apparent when you look at the stat card. Now, I'm not going to look at the movement here because Death Company are only 6 and Sang Guard are 12, but you're going to probably take jetpacks on your Death Company, and if you're not, you're going to save a few points and you're going to have some other idea for them. I'm not sure what you're doing because I always take jetpacks on mine, but I'm sure you've got a plan if that's what you're doing. So the equivalent on movement, weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength and toughness, and they've both got 2 wounds, which is great. However, there's a big difference when you look at the attacks. The Sanguinary Guard have 3 attacks base, whereas the Death Company only have 2. The Sanguinary Guard have a leadership of 8 compared to the Death Company's 7, and the Sanguinary Guard have a save of 2+ in comparison to the Death Company's 3+. And this sort of tail end of the stats makes a huge difference. Now, the Death Company have other rules that help them catch up in these regards, but just the fact that bolted onto that stat line, not relying on bonus rules, not relying on being in certain situations, these Sang Guard always have 3 attacks. That's a big deal. Doesn't matter what situation they're in, they're not degrading below 3 attacks per model. Absolutely amazing. The leadership 8 is very nice, and the save of 2+ means that you can deep strike these guys in, and if they mess up their charge, it's not the end of the world because they are still pretty resilient, especially in large units. If you've got 2 of these units deep striking in, 2 big units of 9, that's going to cost you a lot, about 270 points-ish a unit. But in doing so, you are deep striking a huge ton of extremely tough kit into an area of the battlefield. If you mess up one of the charges, you're not going to have to worry too much. That 2-up save keeps them in the battle. The Death Company, 2 wounds, and yes, they do have a 6-up feel no pain from being under the influence of the Black Rage, but the 2-up save, that just stops those wounds going through in the first place when you make your armor save, and it's really, really nice. Now, let's get on to the loadouts, and this is where the comparison shifts even more in favour of the Sanguinary Guard. Now, the Death Company come with chainswords and bolt pistols, and they are able to swap out for basically any melee weapon, including a Thunderhammer. And that is absolutely brilliant. And essentially, the Sanguinary Guard are 30 points a model, and after you've added a jetpack, the Death Company are 25 points a model. So if you want to look at a disparity and make sure that the points were equal on the armies, it essentially means you've got 5 points of kit to play with per Death Company model. If you take Thunderhammers, then obviously some of you guys are going to be stuck with their chainswords. But it does mean you've got a bit more flexibility on the Death Company. You can give them some dedicated anti-tank. You can make a dedicated Death Company anti-tank squad with 2, 3, 4, 5 Thunderhammers if you wanted, and just get really nasty with it. So the Death Company have a massive amount of flexibility, and that can take you as far as you want to run with it. You can keep it very simple, or you can get very complicated with it and customize different Death Company squads to do different jobs in 5 or more models. The Sangard are a minimum of 4 and up to 10. The Death Company are now still capped at 10. They were 15 and have now been capped at 10, which is a little unfortunate. I used to like to take units of 12 or even 14 sometimes, but with the 2 wounds buff that they got, kind of negates the problem because even a 10-man squad is essentially the same wounds as a 20-man squad was before we got the extra wounds, so that's really nice. Now in terms of loadout, obviously we've talked about the Death Company's flexibility. You can do whatever you want with them, and in comparison to the Sang Guard, you've got 5 points per model, so plenty of flexibility. Now the Sanguinary Guard, they come with either an Encarmine Axe or an Encarmine Sword. Now both of these basically increase the strength, so when you look at a comparison between the strength, the Death Company are on 4 plus whatever points you spend, and some of them may not have any points spent on them, but the Sang Guard are all going to be either strength 5 or strength 6, depending on whether they take the sword or the axe. And that's a really big deal, because that means you're wounding, with the Blood Angels +1 to wound, basically anything on. The worst you're going to be wounding on is 4s. The worst case scenario. You attack a knight, you're strength 5 or 6 with everyone, you're wounding on, you would be 5s, but because he's toughness 8, down to 4s because of Blood Angels. So being basically always wounding, it's almost just should be a rule printed on their data sheet. This unit wounds on a 4 or better always. It can never be worse. That's amazing. That's like a flip reverse it of transhuman physiology where they can't be wounded on more than a 4+. They always wound on a 4 or better. Brilliant. On top of that, a lot of the time it's going to be 2s against infantry and 3s against light vehicles. So really, really useful. They're pouring out of the attacks. The axe is AP -2, the sword is AP -3, so you're cutting through any armor. If the unit doesn't have an invuln, with the amount of attacks you're putting through and your ability to hit and wound, and your hitting is going to be improved, as you'll see in a second, from even more bonus rules, then you're just going to be stacking loads, regardless of loadout, loads and loads of 2 wound saves onto your opponent. And if they've not got an invuln save, the Sang Guard are going to tear through that unit. And if they've got an invuln save, they're going to be failing a few because you've got so many attacks. Of course, remember, with Angels of Death, the Sang Guard on the charge and so on and so forth are on 4 attacks each. And if it's Savage Echo's turn 3, they're on 5 attacks each, which is absolutely brilliant. Now, there's a couple. You can also take as many power fists as you want, and you can also take as many plasma pistols or even inferno pistols as you want. So if you want to get really crazy with these guys and spend just insane points on them, feel free to. You can drop down, spam off 10 plasma pistol shots or 10 inferno pistol shots, just absolutely wreck something in front of you and charge in. I think with that amount of firepower, though, sometimes you might be left without any targets nearby if you went inferno pistols or something like that, deep striking 9 inches in. But most people don't bother with that. The Encarmine Angelus bolt gun is absolutely fantastic. It's assault 2, it's 18 inches, so you're always cranking out 2 shots. Always, always, always. It doesn't matter what range you are. It's, as long as you're within 18, of course. Strength 4, AP -1, and 1 damage. So it's like they're armed with a intercessor bolt rifle, which is about 18-inch range, which is, really good. These guys are never operating outside of 18 inches. They're always in your opponent's face. It's more than enough range. Often you can reach out and clip other units. The AP -1 is really nice for guaranteeing you just can kill off a little bit of chaff, maybe something that's just cheekily holding a table quarter, spray it down, kill it off, rob your opponent of some points and make them have to reposition stuff. So really, really good loadout. And that's compared to the Death Company, who only have bolt pistols, or they can trade both their bolt pistol and their chainsword for a humble bolter. So the ranged fire of the Death Company leaves a lot to be desired in comparison. And you're saving 5 points a model, essentially, or 8 points a model if you don't count the jetpack, but that's just silly. Now, the other thing about this is a bonus for the Death Company, which is if you leave them with the Astartes chainsword, they're getting +1 attack. And the Astartes chainsword, obviously that's not available to the Sanguinary Guard. You just simply don't have that option. And if you take a unit of 9 Death Company, all with chainswords and bolt pistols, just bare bones, you're going to be saving 45 points versus the Sanguinary Guard. You've only got 1 damage per attack, but you're churning out a hell of a lot of attacks. You've saved a lot of points. You've still got your jetpacks. You've still got 2 wounds a model, saving 45. You know, if instead of taking 3 squads of Sanguinary Guard, if you were to take 1 squad of Sanguinary Guard and 2 squads of Death Company, that's saving you a total of 90 points, which is quite a big deal. And those Death Company are going to do a lot. And the Astartes Chainsword is great these days. You know, really, really effective. With just double checking my rules. Yeah, where's the Death Company gone? Looking back and forth. Yeah, with the Astartes Chainsword, of course, it's AP -1 as well. I was just for a moment convinced that it wasn't AP -1, and I was tricking myself. I don't know why. But the Astartes Chainsword is AP -1, so you're still getting that AP -1. You're getting an extra attack. So against units that have invuns and that kind of thing, you're still wounding really well with the Death Company. You're getting loads of attacks through. But, of course, with the Black Rage, you'll be getting an attack over the Sanguinary Guard. So you're really, really stacking the attacks on. That Astartes Chainsword brings the Death Company up to 3 attacks base. If you think about it, the same as the Sang Guard, but you can choose to swap it out for specialist weapons. So, loadout, I'd say the Sang Guard edge it out a little bit. Stats, of course, the Sang Guard edge it out a little bit. So let's have a look at the special rules. Well, they can both Angel of Death and Death from Above. So they can Deep Strike if they've got the jetpacks. Now, the Angelic Visage, each time a melee attack is made against this unit, subtract 1 from that attack's hits roll. Now that is absolutely incredible. -1 to hit in close combat. These guys are often operating in close combat. Your opponent, if you've done your job right and killed off most of your opponent's nasty shooting stuff, then your opponent might be forced to take these guys on with his best close combat unit. And if you're going toe-to-toe with your opponent's best close combat unit, or if you're out and out attacking your opponent's best combat unit with these guys, making them be -1 to hit versus you is going to be a big deal. That's going to swing it in your favour. So these guys are great at taking on the best of the opponent's forces. They have another rule, and one that you're going to try to get off as much as possible. The Heirs of Asgalon. Each time a model in this unit makes an attack, if that model's unit is within 6 inches of any friendly Blood Angels Warlord models, add 1 to that attack's hit roll. So not only are you at 2 up armor save in close combat, which is going to be really, really good, you're -1 to hit in close combat, but if your Warlord's within 6 inches, which he should be, then you're going to be hitting on 2s. So you're swinging the number of attacks, even if the Death Company take those Astartes Chainsword, just swing, and they've got the Black Rage. The number of hits with 2s, probably re-rolling 1s, you're going to be getting a comparable number of hits as the Death Company, but with your superior weaponry and 2 damage per hit that goes through. Brilliant. The Death Company do have a lot of stuff going for them, though. They have the Black Rage. Now, the Black Rage, it's got quite a few different elements to it, but the big one is it gives you +1 attack. So each time this unit fights, if it makes a charge move or performs a heroic intervention this turn, which is for characters, not the Death Company unit, you can add 1 to the attack's characteristic. So that's keeping you toe-to-toe with the Sanguinary Guard. In your movement phase, you can't fall back ever. If you get into combat, you're fighting that combat out until it's over. Either you die or your opponent pulls out or dies. Each time a model in this unit would lose a wound, roll 1d6. On a 6, that wound is not lost. And this brings the Death Company back into a little bit of contention with the Sanguinary Guard. Because of Feel No Pain, believe me, I have poo-pooed the 6-up Feel No Pain on Death Company for as long as I can remember. I am always dissing the Death Company 6-up Feel No Pain. If you've been a long-time viewer, of Mordian Glory, where I feature in a lot of battle reports and that kind of thing, you will know I talk smack about the Death Company 6-up Feel No Pain all the time. But I'll hold my hands up and admit that, as also being a Drukhari player, losing my 6-up Feel No Pain across the board, man, have I felt it. So it's just undeniable that, especially with the Death Company having 2 wounds each now, that 6-up Feel No Pain is really, really solid. It's good. On a unit of 10 Death Company with 2 wounds each, you should, be saving at least a death company and a half over time, if not more, depending on the situation. So, and it can be a really clutch moment, especially if you save a 6-up feel no pain on a 2 damage weapon, keep one of your death company in the fight, and he can absorb another damage attack, another high damage attack. So it takes sort of two damage attacks to finish him off, and you just don't have that option with the Sanguinary Guard. If you get rinsed with a load of overcharged plasma with the Sanguinary Guard, you're going to make basically comparable armor saves. You're still going to get absolutely rinsed, but you've no feel no pain. So that is just everyone that goes through is a dead Sanguinary Guard. You've got a glimmer of hope with the death company, and if a couple of 6s come up on a couple of guys, you can, really reduce the amount of damage the unit takes. And this is further buffed by a stratagem, which I'll discuss in a moment. So, the rules, if we're looking at the special abilities, so to speak, and we're comparing these, -1 to hit, always flat in close combat. And the fact that if your warlord's in range, it's +1 to hit is just absolutely huge. Now let's pretend the warlord's not in range. Let's say he's got killed or he's just not in range for whatever reason, and look at the flat data sheets. The death company are going to have charged him, so they're going to be on +1 attack. That's nice, but it only really helps them keep up with the Sanguinary Guard. The Sanguinary Guard, when they're taking that damage back, they've got that -1 to hit, they've got that 2-up save. Yeah, 6-up feel no pain's nice, but is it really the same? Personally, probably not. I love the Death Company, but probably not. Now, there's a couple of stratagems that we need to take into account, and these stratagems, when played right, can really make a big difference. So they've got 2 each, and then you can use a couple each as well. So the first one for the Death Company is Refusal to Die, and this is 1 CP if you've got 5 or fewer models, or 2 CP, which is quite expensive in the context of the rest of the Blood Angels stratagems. These days, a lot of them are only 1 CP, so 2 CP seems pricey, but it basically gives you a 5-up feel no pain. Now, I use a lot of Death Company, I've been using a lot of Death Company recently, and this stratagem, even though it's costly, it's great. It's really, really good. The 5-up feel no pain plus 2 wounds on the Death Company, it can make a big difference. So I really like that. Now, the other Death Company stratagem is Forlorn Fury. And you use this stratagem at the start of your first battle round before the first turn begins. Select 1 Death Company unit from your army, and it can make a normal move of up to 12 inches as if it was your movement phase, but it's got to stay more than 9 inches away. Now, if both armies have units that can do this, then whoever goes first does it first, obviously. Now, this is really, really cool. If it's got 6 or more models, it's 2 CP, and you're going to have 6 or more models on the first turn of the game, probably, so it's probably going to cost 2 CP. But, I mean, there's a lot to be said for having a little 5-man Death Company squad just squirreled away in a corner out of line of sight. And then, if you get first turn, you spend 1 CP, you rocket 5 Death Company forward. That's 20-25 attacks on the charge, depending on what you do with them. Obviously, remember, you could even spend 2 CP to make them as if they're in the tactical and assault doctrine at the same time from the main Space Marine Codex. You can just jump these into something and just rip it up for a few handful of CP and a handful of points. So it's almost unauto. It's something that is actually effective, and it's kind of with Death Company. It's almost, do you take 2 units, 1 in deep strike, 1 deployed on the field, just in case you get the first turn. If you don't get the first turn, you just play carefully with those Death Company and get them into combat when the rest of your stuff comes in. It just guarantees you an extra turn to charge. Play safe in the first turn. If your opponent pushes forward, it's going to really deter them. If you've got them near an objective, the opponent's going to know they can push forward and attack units, and they're really nasty. So it's nice having Death Company on the board. So, 2 really, really useful stratagems there. Now, what do we have for the Sanguinary Guard? Now, the Sanguinary Guard, they have... Sorry, just 1 second. I'm just finding the page. Oh, Unbridled Archer. I'm sure they've got another one somewhere. But Unbridled Archer. So you use this stratagem at the end of the heroic intervention step of your opponent's charge phase. So when your opponent has done all of their heroic interventions. Also, they've done all their charges, and you can heroically intervene. You choose your characters first, and then once your characters have been, you can do your Sand Guard. You select a Sand Guard unit, and if they're within 6 inches of a unit horizontally or 5 inches vertically, then you can perform an heroic intervention, a 6-inch heroic intervention. That's absolutely incredible. It's 1 CP no matter the size of the unit. This is really, really good on the counter charge. It's just really, really effective. I don't need to go on about how good a 6-inch heroic intervention can be. And with the Sand Guard, that's a lot of attacks. That's not one hero character heroic intervening. That's a lot of attacks. That's going to do some damage. And if your opponent messes up and they end up with a valuable unit within 6 inches of your Sand Guard, you're going to do that. It also means your Sand Guard can keep chopping. If you chop through an opponent's unit in your combat phase, and then let's say some survive and pull out and stay within 6 inches of you, or other units move up, maybe fail a charge, or you're just in the thick of it, then in their charge phase, it means you can essentially charge again. So for 1 CP, essentially, if you're in the thick of it, you get 2 charges, 1 in your phase, 1 in your opponent's phase. Unbelievably powerful for 1 CP. Now, regardless of the number of models in the unit, just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Now, I'm sure there is another Sanguinary Guard stratagem in here, and I just can't see it. Angel Sacrifice, no. Never mind. I'm being really stupid. I think of it as a... This tells you something. I think of it as a Sanguinary Guard stratagem. It's not. It's anyone with a jetpack whose Blood Angels can do this, a jump pack. Descent of Angels is the first one. It's staring me in the face. 1 CP. Use this stratagem at the end of your movement phase. Select 1 Blood Angels core jump pack unit from your army that was set upon the battlefield during the reinforcement step of this phase. And until the end of the turn, you can ignore any or all modifiers to that charge roll. So if you get negatives on the charge, if Custodians try and half your charge with Tanglefoot grenades or whatever it is, ignore that and get in. And also, each time you make an attack, you add 1 to that attack roll. And that can be super cool because it means you can hit on +1 with your Angelus bolt guns if you want. And also, obviously, +1 in close combat, which is really, really good. But you might not need that if your character's in. But, essentially, it's a really useful strategy there. Now, oh, here it is. Yeah, that's it. That's everything. Now, you've got other stratagems that they can both use from both the Codex and the supplement, the Codex supplement and the Space Marines Codex, I mean. But that's essentially the specific ones for those guys. So, all in... Now, the final thing we need to discuss is a boon for the Death Company, and that's characters that specifically interact and target them for buffs. And we've got a few of these available to us. The first one is that captains and lieutenants that have been upgraded to the Death Company, they, for all intents and purposes, they lose their rights of battle because they've gone crazy. They don't affect most units around them, but they do affect Death Company units still. And this is really good because the Death Company can still pick up on those buffs and even gives you the option to run these units together with that intent in mind. Not only this, but you have Asterath, who has a 6-inch bubble for Death Company. Alongside his other abilities, that means they just ignore all leadership. They don't take break tests. They don't suffer casualties from attrition like that. Really nice. Especially now they're 2 wounds each, keeping those valuable models on the board. You've also got Lomates, who, for any unit within 6 inches, he gives rerolls on the charge. Now that's great because you already have the access to an icon that you could, for a relic that you can put on another character to give rerolls for all units within 6 inches. If you've got Lomates and a couple of Death Company units deep striking in somewhere else on the board, you've got that going off twice in your army, and having essentially rerolls on 2 6-inch bubbles for all the units within them, that's going to just really wreck face. That's going to be nasty. 2 units of Death Company with Lomates, 2 units of Sanguinary Guard with a character with that relic, and game over, GG. Now, this is not something that you're necessarily going to have, and I'm not saying that Lomates and Asterath are even competitive. I'm just saying it's something that we have access to with the Death Company, and it can be something that you can lean into if you want to take a really Death Company heavy list. these guys are going to help you make that list even more powerful, even more viable. So overall, do I think the Death Company go up toe to toe against the Sanguinary Guard? Well, I love Death Company, but I have to be honest, no, I don't think so. When you look at the extra attack that's just built into the Sanguinary Guard, regardless of the loadout they take, the Death Company lose their third attack and go down to 2 if they trade their chainsword for some more fancy equipment. When you've got the 2-up armor save, it just gives you more flexibility. You can hold ground, you can control the battlefield better, and you're just less scared of the sort of mid-damage AP-2 stuff that's flung around. Not only that, but -1 to hit in close combat, where these guys are always going to be, that just edges out, for me, the 6-up feel no pain that the Death Company have. 6-up feel no pain can be really nice, again, especially against multi-damage weapons, 2-damage weapons specifically, but -1 to hit and a 2-up save going together, for me, that is just better resilience. The loadout's better on the Sandguard, they have better ranged attacks, they're just better overall, toe to toe. 5 points difference. It's a bargain to get the Death Company over, get the Sanguinary Guard over the Death Company, because the Death Company with a jetpack are 25 points, and the Sandguard, you know, at time of recording this video, are 30 points a model. So it's a massive bargain bucket of bonuses for the Sanguinary Guard for 5 points. Now, does this mean that the Death Company are irrelevant? Absolutely not. The Death Company are a ridiculously lethal unit, and 45 points isn't that much. But if you're taking 3 elite units, all 9 men, which is definitely extremely competitive, then if you're taking 2 Death Company units out of those 3, you're essentially saving versus the Sandguard 90 points. If you had no Sandguard, don't do that. But if you did, you'd be saving almost 150 points, which is quite a lot. That's a smash captain, essentially. So you are saving enough points to give you some breathing room in the battlefield, in your list rather, to allow you to just squeeze those extra characters in, get those extra buffs in, take that extra unit of whatever you need for your list. You know, it can be very difficult in an elite army to fit everything in, and the Death Company bring certainly comparable lethality to the Sanguinary Guard. So if you are looking for extra kill power and you don't need the extra board control in your list, then the Death Company is exactly what you need, because they're going to save you points, they're going to give you that breathing room in your list, and they're still going to bring all of the killing power. But if I could only pick one, really sorry Death Company, but it would have to be the Sanguinary Guard. Fortunately though, we don't have to pick one, and you can have as many as you like. So I hope you found this video entertaining. I hope it's given you some food for thought, not only for your competitive list, but just in general. You know, what do you feel about the 2 units? If I've missed something, please do put it below. But otherwise, I'm going to wrap this video up there. So I hope you found this video interesting. I hope you found it entertaining. This has been the Scholar Progenium. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.